Hello everyone. Last summer, four friends decided to go camping in the wilderness. But that night at the abandoned lake, just outside our town, turned out to be far different than we had imagined. So, what about the notes we found deep in the forest after Ennis disappeared? And the terrifying silhouettes we saw on the lake? What were the true secrets behind these mysterious events? Do you think something really went missing that night, or were we just imagining things? If you love spine-chilling, unforgettable horror stories, you're in the right place. I want to reach 500 subscribers. Would you consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and making sure not to listen alone? Because tonight, attention, I share horror stories every day at 1500 hours p.m. Last summer, for friends from university, Barak, Lily, Jake, and I made a plan to immerse ourselves in nature for a few days. It sounded like a great idea, simple and fun, a perfect vacation. But none of us could have known where that place would take us. At my suggestion, we decided to camp at an abandoned lake deep in a forest with no name on the map. It's so far perfect for exploration, I thought. The forest path was dense with trees, each leaf seemingly merging with another. This was a place barely anyone in the town knew about, and we, without a care, ventured into its dark history. The first day was perfect. Fresh air, birds singing, the peaceful atmosphere of the forest. When we set up camp by the lake, everything seemed beautiful, but there was a subtle unease too. The lake was crystal clear, but eerily still. Looking at it made us feel like we might drown just by gazing into it. The weather was hot, yet the surface of the water didn't ripple. Ennis said, "It can't be this calm. There's no rain, no wind." As the night began to fall, we gathered around the fire and started telling scary stories. In such a quiet place, the stories felt oddly unsettling, but we were all enjoying it. Suddenly, we heard a sound. But this sound wasn't like anything we had heard in the forest before. "Is someone there?" I asked. We couldn't find the source of the sound, but none of us could forget that moment. We spent the night in our tents. When I woke up, I noticed something strange. Ennis was gone. His tent was zipped up from the inside, but it was empty. His things were still in place, but Ennis was gone. Mert panicked and said, "Where did he go?" Barak and I searched around the tent, but we couldn't find a trace. After an hour, we realized our phones weren't getting any signal. But there was something else. Everything was too quiet. Normally, there would be night sounds in the forest, but now, it was dead silent. After searching, we spent that dreadful night waiting. Barak refused to sleep. She felt something was wrong. She kept saying she saw things moving right before our eyes. "Someone's out there," she said. "They're watching us." After a while, we all began to wait in fear, but we didn't see anything. Do you think someone was watching us? The next morning, at the spot where Ennis had disappeared, we found something. A note. But it was very strange. The edges of the paper were burnt, and the writing was smudged, but we could read a few words. "Never set foot deeper into this forest again, or you will disappear too." This wasn't the kind of thing Ennis would write. So who wrote it when he disappeared? At that moment, everything got even more terrifying. Days went by. Every night, we started hearing different sounds. These sounds were so distorted, they didn't even sound like human voices. Each morning, when we returned to our tents, there was never a trace. We slowly moved towards the spot where Ennis had disappeared, but with each step, we felt like something was watching us. Yet every time, we saw nothing. One evening, while walking towards that cursed lake, I noticed something strange. In the lake, four silhouettes appeared. No matter how much we looked, we couldn't understand who or what they were. But one thing was for sure, they weren't real. None of them had faces, and they moved across the water without touching it. Barak suddenly screamed, "Leave us alone!" Then, something began to rise from the water beneath. Slowly, a large shadow emerged, moving through the water while also watching us. At that moment, we started running. But the paths we took through the forest kept disappearing. There was no way to lead us out. No way to go. Eventually, we realized we'd lost everything, and we had to spend the night in the forest. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to the morning. We had vanished without a trace around that cursed lake. That night, I'm certain that someone left us there, and the next group would find a new nightmare. The next day, we returned to the town. But no one helped us. Because that town had once hosted others who had disappeared just like us. Nobody had disappeared since that day. But every night, something reminds me of it. Those silhouettes, and the silent lake. If this story affected you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, it's not the place where you camp that matters, it's the place that's watching you. Some paths, some sounds, are meant only to lead to fear. If you enjoy real horror stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Because tonight, everything will change. Last summer, my friends and I decided to take a weekend getaway. We were tired of our busy work lives, and we thought a few days in nature would do us good. We found a remote campsite on a map, a place so abandoned it didn't even have a name. It was truly eerie, but hey, no one would go there, right? As the sun started to set, we arrived at the campsite. It looked abandoned, like no one had been here for years. There were old remnants of tents scattered around, and the air was filled with an unsettling silence. But we didn't mind and started setting up our tents. As night fell, we lit our campfire and gathered around it. At first, everything seemed normal, but something was off. There was an uneasy feeling in the air, but no one was saying anything about it. As the night went on, everything became even quieter. The only sounds were distant bird calls and the rustling of leaves. But then, suddenly, we began hearing something else. Whispers. The voices were mixed, overlapping, yet clear. At first, we thought it was the wind, but then we realized the sounds were coming from somewhere. We stood up immediately. "Is someone out there?" I asked. But no one responded. We all heard it, but we couldn't see anyone. Not until the water on the lake started to stir. The surface of the lake began to tremble as if someone was walking on it. The moonlight hit the water, and that's when we all saw it. 4 silhouettes walking on the water's surface, but with no feet. They were gliding, floating, not touching the water at all. We stepped back in fear, but everything had already changed. Spending the night at a campsite is always an experience. But tonight, on the shores of a lost island, you'll discover that nothing is as it seems. If you're brave enough, make sure to subscribe and like the video. Because tonight, you'll embark on an adventure where nothing is what it appears to be. My friends and I plan to spend some time alone in nature, camping, watching the stars, and escaping from the world for a while. But things didn't go as expected. As the first rays of sunlight appeared, we began our journey deep into the forest. The air was cold, and the fog seemed to cover everything slowly. No one was really paying much attention, but something was off. We all felt a sense of unease. After about an hour of walking, we came across something strange. As we followed the dirt path, we spotted a rock between the trees. There was something written on it: "Don't follow me, those who walk this path get lost forever." No one took the writing seriously. But me. I had a strange feeling in my gut. The others laughed it off, and we continued towards the campsite. But with each passing minute, my discomfort grew. We set up camp and night fell. We gathered around the fire, chatting and enjoying ourselves. The fog still lingered, and as night grew darker, the light from the fire barely seemed to fight off the darkness. Suddenly, strange sounds began coming from the forest. Someone was whispering, but we couldn't see anyone. "Are we hearing things?" I asked, but no one replied. I heard it too. Yet there was no one around. Then I saw something strange. The rock we had passed earlier. This time, the message on it was even fainter. I didn't say anything, but I felt something was wrong. The others continued laughing and having fun, but inside, I felt a growing dread. As the night went on, the silence around us deepened. Suddenly, I heard a scream. We all rushed out of our tents, but one of our friends was gone. We couldn't understand what had happened. His things were still in place, but he was nowhere to be found. We followed the sounds of his voice through the forest, but we couldn't find him. There wasn't a trace or any sign of where he had gone. But then, something strange happened. We came across that rock again, and the writing had changed. Instead of "Don't follow me," it now said, "Don't go back." Quickly, we decided to turn back, but everything had changed. The paths we had walked before were gone. The trees had shifted, and our map was useless. We were lost. After hours of wandering through the forest, we finally found a clearing. But this clearing, it was exactly where we had first seen the rock. The place where it all began. There was no sign of the path anymore. The message on the rock had changed again. This time it read, "They're waiting for you here." And then, suddenly, I saw it. My missing friend, the one who had vanished earlier, was standing in front of us. But he was no longer himself. He was reading the message on the rock, and then he slowly walked away into the forest, vanishing as if he never existed. We couldn't finish our story. Everything seemed like an illusion. The moment we crossed that rock, everything started to blur. Now, I remember, not just once but many times, we had gone to that place, but now nothing seemed to make sense. The end of the story is lost, but one thing remains. Once you walk that path, there's no coming back. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments to the translation. If you're going to spend the night alone, think twice before turning off the lights. Because sometimes, shadows hide much more than what you can see in the light. If you want to truly feel fear, close your eyes and listen to this story. But be careful. Once you hear it, there's no turning back. We decided to go on a camping trip to escape the crowds for a few days. It was me, my friends Lara, Mehmet, and Kaner. We found a campsite in the woods, so far off the map that its name was almost forgotten. We were planning to camp by a lake. At first, everything seemed normal. After setting up our tents, we went out to explore the area. Everything was a mess. The trees were so close to each other that the sky was barely visible. The silence was overwhelming. It felt like we were the only ones in the forest. As the day passed, we wanted to go deeper into the woods. But something was off. There was an unsettling feeling in the air. With each step, it felt like something was following us. "This place is strange," I said. Lara replied. "What's so strange?" "It's just the forest," but I could see it in her eyes. Something wasn't right. When we reached the lake, the surface of the water was completely still. There wasn't a breeze, no ripples on the water. But on the surface, something was there. At first, I didn't notice, but slowly, I saw a shape disappearing beneath the water. A figure, swimming, but not touching the water, just gliding over it. I told Kaner, but he looked at me the same way. "You saw it too," he said. We had all seen it, but no one said anything. The water stayed eerily calm, almost mocking us. That night, we gathered around the campfire to enjoy ourselves. But as the night wore on, an odd silence enveloped everything. It was so deep, it felt like the forest was retreating from us. No one said anything, but we all felt it. We were being watched. The next morning, things got even stranger. We heard Kaner scream. We rushed outside, but Kaner was gone. His tent was still there, everything was in place, but he was missing. Lara and Mehmet wanted to search for him, but we couldn't find any trace. The paths we had walked earlier were gone, and the forest seemed to change every time we looked away. Our maps were useless, and we couldn't find any signs. The hours passed, and all we could hear was each other's breathing. As we ventured further, we suddenly saw a light. It looked like a campfire from afar. We started running towards it, but the closer we got, the farther it seemed to move. It was almost like it was leading us away. Finally, we gathered our courage and made our way back to our camp. But when we arrived, everything had changed. Our tents were not where we left them, everything was dark. It felt like time had been distorted, and everything was out of place. I heard a whisper from inside. It was Kaner's voice. But it didn't sound like him. "You'll find me," he was saying. When I turned to look, I saw the lost silhouette again. That's when I realized something. There was a feeling that anyone who came to this forest would somehow disappear. Kaner's disappearance, the lake, and those strange beings. There's no way to understand what they really were. Somehow, we managed to escape. But every day, I remember the voices, the figure, and those strange whispers. Now, someone else is lost there. Maybe one day, like the others.